Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. What is going on? Sunday night, and I thought, you know what? I watched a bunch of coaches' press conferences, watched a bunch of clips on the internet, even did a little YouTube scouting on Bo Nix when I was bored this weekend. I said, let's fire up a podcast. So we'll start by, I have a couple quick takes on some things that happened this weekend in regards to rookie quarterbacks, who most of them, Caleb, Bo Nix, Maye, and JJ, all of them. I mean, we're all on the field, so that was cool. A couple quick thoughts. Something that was revealed last week with Joe Burrow and the success rate when it comes to his surgery. And Bill Belichick did something a little differently than I was hoping he would do. But he ultimately, I think, is going to get the point across when it comes to changing the perception with the NFL owner. So we got a little football talk to start the week because every team starts their offseason activities officially, rookies and veterans, tomorrow. So we get about another month and a half of football, give or take, and let's enjoy it before the summer really kicks in. We're waiting until training camp. But before we dive in, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. I've been using them religiously now for well over a year and a half. And anyone that wants to go to any event, I've watched more playoff hockey in probably the last, 3 weeks than I have in a long, long time. Those games look fantastic. I would highly recommend, if you live in one of those areas and want to go to a game, to check that out because it looks as good as it gets. So hockey games, NBA playoff games, Major League Baseball. I saw the Pirates just called up their young ace who had 7 Ks in 4 innings on Saturday from LSU. He's got a sweet mustache going. So if you want to check out any event, concerts as well, comedy shows, we got you covered. Here's what you do. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first episode. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So let's dive into the rookie quarterbacks. Lot going on. First and foremost, on Friday, I originally thought it was a pretty big deal. Like, I was going to give Eberflus a lot of credit when they just go, have you talked to Caleb Williams, how this process, the competition of training camp, starting quarterback, is he the starting quarterback? Have you told him he's a starting quarterback? He's like, no, he's the starting quarterback. I don't need to tell him that. And I was like, that's the way to handle it. Because one of my things always with some of these coaches, especially defensive guys, like, compete. We got to earn it in practice. And then I just typed in right before I hopped on. I'm like, do they even have like an older veteran on the roster? Like a Flacco, a Mariota, just some of those names that are around the league. They do not. I mean, they got like Tyson Badgett and Rippon. So it was an easy one for them. But I do appreciate just there's no competition. There's no, we'll start it out. We'll see where he's at mentally. Like, no, he's the starting quarterback. I don't care if John Middlekauff's the backup. I don't care if Joe Montana at 60 years old is the backup. Regardless who's on the roster, Caleb Williams, starter, immediately when everyone gets together on Monday morning. Obviously at rookie minicamp and starting the first day, we're all on the field together sometime this next week or two. So the Bears, and this is the thing, the Packers have had a huge advantage in that division for 30 years. They have easily been the best run organization in the NFC North, right? The Bears have been very up and down with just their organizational structure. The Lions, for the most part, have been a disaster. Well, let's face it. I mean, all Lions fans know these last couple years, is so cool because it's never felt like this. It's like we got real coaches, we got real players, we got a real plan. Wait, are we the Detroit Lions or are we the Pittsburgh Steelers? And Minnesota's definitely had their moments of being well run, but they've also seen some weird times as well. The Packers have been set the standard for consistency. And now it feels like, and this is why so many people are high on that division, is because a bunch of teams are well run. Now, that's why you play the games on the field. But, the Bears, Eberflus with his new look, easy. This guy's our starting quarterback. I actually thinking about it, a little shocked that they didn't sniff around, I don't know, that $5 million mark for just a veteran backup. Just basic principles of what it's like to be in the NFL. Like, this is usually what we do. This is how we handled it. Even a Flacco type, right? This is how I prepare. This is what time I get up. This is what I like to do. Instead of just Caleb looks around and sees Tyson Badgett. But I like where the Bears are headed. And honestly, it's, the schedule's coming out this week. I think Bears-Packers should be either Sunday or Monday Night Football. Obviously, the Chiefs play on Thursday night. There was a rumor floating around that it's Chiefs-Ravens. Personally, I would go Chiefs-Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's first game, Chargers. To me, they did that a couple years ago. If you remember, Amazon's first game was Chiefs-Chargers, and that was with Brandon Staley, and it was fantastic. I would go Chiefs-Chargers, but if they go Chiefs-Ravens, I can't complain. And I would go some route of either Niners-Cowboys Sunday night or Monday night and Packers-Bears. Now, maybe they'll want to mix in an AFC team. You could go a little curveball if you went Packers-Bears Monday Night Football. That would be a Monday Night Football game. Packers-Bears. You could go Niners-Jets. I think would be pretty good. Aaron Rodgers game. But I think Niners-Cowboys, forever they loved going in some, rotation, Cowboys at Giants or Giants at Cowboys. But the Giants have basically sucked for, 8-9 years, beside 2 years ago when they won 9 games. But the Cowboys are a no-brainer to get an enormous number, and the Niners are top 2 or 3 when they're good, rating team in the NFL. So that's probably what they end up doing. But I do hope that Packers-Bears, I think Monday night, how badass that Caleb's first game, all the Jordan Love hype, that would be sweet. I do hope they go Harbaugh, but it does feel like they're going to go Ravens. All we've ever talked about when it comes to young quarterbacks is, guys that get highly drafted. And I would include second round players. Where do you get drafted? What is your landing spot, right? What type team do you go to? And for the most part, guys that get drafted high, as we all know, get drafted to such bad teams. If I hire you out of wherever you went to college at 22, 23 years old, and I put you in a company that is an absolute disaster, you individually probably will not have that much success. 98%, 99% of people cannot rise above dysfunction when they're young. I know I couldn't, and I know most people I've ever met could not as well. But when you get to go to just a normal company, let alone a high-functioning one, you are going to be put in position to succeed. And then as time goes, it weeds out the haves and have-nots. But I know from my own experience, I got to go to Fresno State right after I graduated from Cal Poly. Pat Hill, who had been there for a long time, the program was successful. It was an incredible landing spot. I got very, very lucky. I had a lot of friends that graduated. And, when we graduated in like the 08 range, a lot of these companies in the Bay Area were really taking off. And it was Oracle, Facebook, Apple had been around for a long time, but was going to another stratosphere. And if you got in right there, a lot of them had a lot of financial success. It was a good time. So Bo Nix, I wouldn't say got shit on, but most people thought that's crazy. You can't draft Bo Nix there. So earlier today, I'm kind of bored, just kind of lounging around on Sunday. Grabbed the iPad, and I just typed in some basically cut-ups, highlights of Bo Nix. And I've watched him play the last couple of years because I'm a Pac-12 homer, and that conference no longer exists. Do you know who he kind of reminded me of watching him play? A lot of. And I thought these two guys were very similar players in college. Derek's got a better arm, but Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo. And both those guys who were drafted in the second round went on, relative to where they were drafted, to have a ton of success and make a ton of money. Now, Derek's career has been up and down, but I had a front row seat in the organization that he had to play in for a long time, and I'm not defending him. I'm not acting like if he would have gone to the Pittsburgh Steelers or Andy Reid, he would have been some top 5 quarterback. But I think his career looks a lot different if he doesn't go to one of the more chaotic places for 8-9 years than the place he went to in the Raiders. And he was still relatively pretty good. Jimmy Garoppolo is a good example of a guy. Now, he went later in the second round than Derek. Where'd he get to go? Well, he immediately gets to go sit in a room with Tom Brady for 3.5 years, be coached by Josh McDaniels, who's a terrible head coach, damn good offensive coordinator, and be around Bill Belichick. And then when he gets traded, Belichick trades him to Kyle Shanahan. And his career on the field in terms of wins and losses has a lot of success. And I watch Bo Nix, I'm like, I see a lot of those guys, similar size, similar movement. Both those guys were better athletes when they were younger and pretty accurate. Now, I wouldn't say he has the most explosive arm in the draft, but watch him like he's got a pretty good arm, throws pretty well on the run. And then it came up on my YouTube page, Sean Payton talking like, yeah, he was, we're very, very excited to have him here. And all we've hammered home over the years is like where you go to really matters. Patrick Mahomes obviously is one of the best players we've ever seen, but we all agree he really benefited from going to Andy Reid. And just a lot of recent quarterbacks that got drafted. Like when Josh Allen and the Bills took a chance on him, their offensive coordinator was Brian Daboll. And obviously was very, very important in the growth of him as a player. Jared Goff was an absolute laughingstock his first year. I mean, some people thought, like, is this even an NFL player? Jeff Fisher gets fired, Sean McVay comes in, and the rest is history. There was a little bump in the road at the end of his LA time, but he's gone on to have a very, very successful career. So I watched Bo Nix, and any Oregon fan, and there's a lot of them out there, go, I mean, last year his statistics were insane. The knock on him is a lot of bubble screens and stuff. Okay, just remove those. Can he throw on the run? Can he be accurate down the field? Can he understand the offense? Well, Sean Payton believes he can. And here's the other thing. We know Sean Payton is also the offensive coordinator. So did he get quote-unquote overdrafted in the history of the league? Does a guy like him usually go 14? No. But if you did redrafts, which has never happened in the history of mankind, but if there ever were, guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins would obviously not have gone where they went. They would have gone a lot higher in their drafts. They all would have gone in the top 15. Maybe not 1 overall, but they ain't going 25th. So if you can look at it like that, the cost of quarterback inflation is what it is. We see it every day in our lives. The cost of everything we do is a lot more. It's still, if you need a car, if you need a home, like these things are the price. So we know it's well established now. If there is a quarterback that has any talent and has any success in college at a bigger program and has any hype, like he's not lasting till pick 50 anymore. Those days are done. They're over. No matter how many of these guys like Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields flame out and get moved on for 4th and 6th round picks, don't get their 5th round option picked up. It didn't impact this class 1 iota. But if you're Sean Payton and you go, God, I see a lot of similarities in those guys who I would have loved to have as we transition off Drew Brees, because I think I can win with that guy. And I've always been a huge fan of the draft from the marketplace standpoint. Like, you don't need to draft that guy right there. You could have got him 2 rounds later. But I hear a lot in the draft, like, this guy was probably more of a 2nd round pick. Well, they drafted him at pick 31. I'll just use an example because the Niners took a lot of criticism for Ricky Pearsall. No clue how this guy's going to be in the NFL. I would say Kyle has a pretty good track record recently of drafting wide receivers and knows exactly what he wants. Most people would say that's pretty rich. He's a top 50 player, but pick 31. Well, they don't pick again until pick 64. So they don't have that. If they like him and there's no one else in the group that they feel comfortable with, if he's their highest graded player, why not take him? Now, when you take a guy like God, and this is what happened to Belichick at the end of his run. Like, God, he just took a guy in the 2nd round that we had 5th round grades on. Like, that's insane. When you do stuff like that, I push back. But when it comes to Bo Nix, like, if you view him anywhere in the world of Jimmy Garoppolo or Derek Carr, it's an easy pick. That has nothing to do with how it's going to look. I'm just talking about the value, the guy, and I think his skill set actually is better than he gets credit for, at least. And part of it is you get, there's so much air taken out of the room when we talked about Caleb, rightfully so, one of the bigger name prospects, I would say, of my life. I mean, seriously, I would say Andrew Luck's probably the most hyped prospect of my life. Peyton Manning, I was in like junior high. I don't quite remember, but obviously he was a highly touted. Everyone was talking about him. But part of that draft was like Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf. I would say Matt Stafford, Cam Newton, those guys were really highly touted, and Trevor Lawrence. And I would put Caleb right in the mix, right behind Andrew Luck. In terms of hype, in terms of no-brainer, in terms of would have been the number one pick in the draft for multiple years, had he not, Andrew returned to school, Caleb didn't have an option. If Caleb could have come out last year, he would have, and he would have been the top pick. So I just think that I just wonder if Bo Nix is going to be a lot better than people think, just because I think he's going to be able to function in that offense, and if he's more talented than people realize. Now, is their team good enough? Is the talent just on the roster good enough for the team to be competitive? There are a lot of unanswered questions. But here's the one thing I know. The head coach is also the play caller, and for a long period of time, before everyone has been shitting on him, and he deserved it last year. I mean, early on in the season, like, what's going on? Part of it by the end, it's Russell Wilson. I defended him for the way he got rid of Russell Wilson. You don't like the guy, what's the point of keeping him? You didn't sign a contract. Get him out of the building, especially when he's kind of a weirdo. But that's something to keep an eye on. It really is. And I love when videos go viral. This one I just saw on the internet was side by side of Drake Maye throwing a football. Both of them throwing like a deep, basically a guy down the seam, and Jayden Daniels throwing the football. And the ball is down the field with Jayden Daniels before it's out of Drake Maye's hands. And we talked a lot about this with Drake Maye's situation. Like Brian Daboll was interested. Kevin O'Connell was interested. It was a project. And part of dealing with a project is fixing them. And there's a lot to work with. The measurables, the character, everything. But like, you got to attempt to fix some stuff. And it's very, very hard. I love golf. And I played Friday and Saturday. And I got a lesson probably 2 months ago, and I've been working on some things, but I would say the majority of my shots are muscle memory, and it resorts back. Any human being that has played any sport that tries to change something that is different from what they inherently do, it can be a very big challenge. So I'm fascinated. Like, I don't blame them for picking them, especially. And I said, if you're telling me Daboll wanted him and Kevin O'Connell wanted him, probably, and they've even said this, like, we knew the team's interested. It actually just, hammered home and reiterated our fascination or intrigue and just love of this player. But for now that the player's on your team, for him to be good, you got to fix him or at least change him. And it's going to be very, very interesting because, Alex Van Pelt was just running out of Cleveland. Now, was that because Deshaun Watson wanted him out? I don't know. He's a former quarterback. Gerard Mayo, I'm sorry. As of right now, I don't consider he knows anything about offense. How could he? He's been coaching for 5 years, and he was a linebacker. And let's face it, most defensive guys can be hard-headed when it comes to the offense, but I don't think Gerard Mayo can just stand next to him and coach him up. So it's going to be a challenge. And that's that getting rid of the ball and accuracy, like was a downfall of Sam Darnold. He's got a loopier release, and he has a big arm, and his accuracy can be a problem. Just from a size standpoint, movement standpoint, and arm strength standpoint, Sam Darnold has it all. But that loopy release gives that extra step to the DB, and the accuracy is a little off. It's something that you got to try to fix. And I watched Darnold last year. He never really fixed it. Now, it doesn't mean he hasn't improved with his decision-making, but it's interesting to see. I like projects. I'm pro taking big swings, but now you got to figure it out. Now it's on the coaches. The NBA playoffs are heating up, and so is the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out as the NBA postseason winds down. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Thing that's not on the coaches is this Joe Burrow situation. There was an article that came out on Friday that, he got the wrist surgery last year. And when I think of ACL or Achilles surgeries, and I think most of us do, I think we just assume, he's going to be fine. Eventually, like the timetables change depending on who you are. It could be 8 months, could be 9 months. If you're Aaron Rodgers, could be 2 months, whatever. But you're going to come back fully healthy. Now, depending on your age, I don't expect Rodgers to be as mobile as he was when he was 30 years old. Same thing with Cousins, who's never been that mobile and who's getting older. But when you're a younger player in his 20s, like Joe Burrow, when I see surgery, he had surgery, he's going to be fine. I just assume 100% over time, right? And this article said, actually, most surgeries, right, on ACLs, Achilles, elbows, whatever, have a 90 to 95% success rate. This specific surgery is actually 70 to 75%. What? This doctor also said that it is basically impossible to not avoid inflammation in your wrist when you are using it, especially with a guy like Joe Burrow, who's just, there's no way to get around it. I mean, you use it every time you throw. And the key is the moment you feel it, you got to be very, very cautious. And I've said this multiple times. When that guy's on, he is as dominant as anybody. And he's the only really active player, because Brady's gone, to take Patrick Mahomes down in the playoffs. And, obviously we've seen his good at LSU and in the pros. The guy's a fucking star. But there is no debating these injuries. And listen, maybe this doesn't crop up. But I don't think these stats just come out of nowhere. It's just pretty alarming. So it's something that just, anytime he's moving that thing around or misses a practice, I think until we're proven otherwise, it's fair to be a little concerned, which sucks. I love watching the guy play. He's one of my favorite players in the league. That team is a very enjoyable team to play. Just the way, they fling it around, they throw bombs. They're a really, really fun offense when he's on the field. So I'm rooting for him to be 100% healthy and this never to be an issue again. But I don't know. You read things like that, you get a little scared. And last but not least, the moment Bill Belichick couldn't get a job, like Julian Edelman said, Foxborough High wouldn't even hire you. Even though I think if Bill was interested, Foxborough High might have interest. But was to get on Thursday Night Football, Amazon Prime, or Monday Night Football, which was impossible because of Joe and Troy. So basically, your only option was, could you get in the booth for Thursday Night Football? Kirk Herbstreit, college guy, one of the best college guys of all time. I don't love him in the NFL. And part of it, him and Al have weird chemistry. It's not a great broadcast. As someone who's been watching sports broadcasts that I can remember for 35 plus years, I think we all agree it's one of the rougher ones. It feels more like a lower level Sunday game at 10 o'clock in the morning Pacific Standard Time than it does one of the marquee games. When you turn on Sunday Night Football and you get Tirico and Collinsworth, they just have really good chemistry. Just like Al Michaels and Collinsworth had really good chemistry. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman have really good chemistry. They're just clunky. And part of it is Kirk is, in a weird way, an outsider. And if you just remove Herbstreit, put Belichick, it would be an incredible way to change the perception, because there are 2 games a week that every owner in the league, beside the 2 playing in the game, watch. That is Thursday and Monday Night Football. Well, that didn't happen. And I was like, God, I hope Bill doesn't do some pregame show or do something stupid. Those are so dumb. You don't even get anything out of that. Plus, especially on Sundays, most of these owners don't watch any of that stuff because his perception is bad. Now, I do think the roast helped change it. I wonder if the roast was a pivotal moment for society when it's just we just say whatever we want again. Let's just let it rip. If those guys are doing it, it's one of the most refreshing events I've seen in a long time. It felt like a moment It really did. Props to Tom Brady for doing that. I know he got paid a lot of money, but I can't imagine many people of his status would have pulled the trigger on that. Maybe he just really hates his ex-wife, but it was announced, I think, on Friday with Peyton Manning that Bill Belichick will be on every first quarter of the Manningcast. And for the first time, I like most people, the Manningcast when it first started was really cool. It was awesome. Well, the moment they hired Joe and Troy, I just started watching the broadcast. I was like, I love Peyton and Eli, and I like hanging out with them, but they have weird guests on Zoom, and I don't really care like what Kevin Hart's saying during the Eagle game. Like, I just want to watch the game. I do think getting Bill Belichick on the first quarter would get me to change the channel. And I do think it'll get the owners to change the channel because one thing he showed at the roast and he showed at McAfee with the draft. I saw some of the clips. And this is like most people you follow like on Instagram, right? Or Twitter or any of your social media channels, you're going to have a you're going to think something about them, especially any famous person. That's like fake. It's like reality television on social media. If you hell, you might follow some people you hate. I do it. It's sick, I know, but I definitely follow some people I hate. I bet if you met them, they might be nothing like their online persona. And hell, you might like them. And I think most people just assume, oh, Belichick, curmudgeon asshole, tough to dick, miserable, just not fun. And I wonder if he can loosen up because he's going to go on McAfee during the day on Monday, which his clips, especially if he lets it loose on a team or a coach, will definitely go viral. And that will be passed around the NFL world fast. And I think him with Peyton and Eli could be very, very beneficial to his career because he's no lock to get a job next year. I know everyone thinks it, but I don't know. You talk about a 74-year-old guy. Some of these teams that we think are going to suck, what if they don't? Some of these teams that are going to inevitably fire coaches, what if their team's just terrible? And he's like, I'm not even interested in doing that. Maybe he would be so desperate. But I do think this will go a long, long way of just the owners that had, let's face it, I mean, he got one interview. One team interviewed him. Pretty sure there were like 6 or 7 openings. And I think this could help change it. And I'm interested to watch. Like I said, I didn't go to Peyton and Eli at all last year. And not because I don't like them. I would say universally, most people enjoy Peyton and Eli on TV BSing about football. It's fun. But like and a part of it is I do this for a job. Like I like locking in, and Joe and Troy are good. I mean, I know Joe Buck on the internet, everyone thinks he sucks. Like, yeah, he's actually really good. Probably one of the all-time greats. And Troy's kind of my style. You know, he's kind of a dying breed of a guy that will just rip people. You know, that was an awful call by the offensive coordinator. You watch some of these broadcasts, everyone's just the greatest. It's like, God, that's not what we're thinking when we're sitting on our couch watching this game. We just saw him, run a quarterback sneak on 3rd and 8. But I do think he's going to get a lot of traffic, especially in that first quarter. If I was Joe and Troy, I'd be like, what is – now, both of them got enormous amounts of money. I mean, I think Troy signed for $150 and Buck signed for like $80 million. But I wouldn't love that because it's going to make some people change the channel.